Think you know everything about that cat-eating alien from the 80s? Think again. Behind ALF's lovable facade lies a production nightmare that drove actors to physical violence. A heroin-addicted writer whose hallucinations inspired episodes, and safety hazards so dangerous that cast members regularly fell through trapdoors. From an uncredited circus performer who couldn't speak English to a controversial electrocution scene that nearly killed a child, the real story of ALF is far stranger than anything that happened on Melmac. Fact 1. Max Wright, physically attacked the ALF puppet. Working on ALF was so stressful that one of the main actors literally attacked the show's furry star. Max Wright, who played the long-suffering father Willie Tanner, reached his breaking point during the 4th season and physically assaulted the ALF puppet in what can only be described as a complete meltdown on set. The incident happened because ALF was one of the most technically demanding shows ever produced for television. Unlike other sitcoms where actors could interact naturally with each other, the human cast had to perform alongside a puppet that was operated by Paul Fusco from underneath the set through a maze of trapdoors. Every scene required multiple takes, precise timing, and endless patience as the puppeteers reset their positions and adjusted the mechanics. Wright, who had a background in serious theater, found himself playing second fiddle to what he called an inanimate object that got all the best lines and comedic moments. The show took 20 to 25 hours to film each 30-minute episode, compared to the typical few hours needed for most sitcoms. The cast had to memorize where dangerous holes were cut into the floor, navigate around technical equipment, and wait for long periods between takes while the puppet crew made adjustments. When Wright finally snapped, he grabbed the ALF puppet and began attacking it while screaming, "Put us all on sticks, we're all puppets!" The outburst was so violent that producers had to physically pull the actor away from the puppet to stop him from damaging it. Fellow cast member Artie Lang, who worked with Wright years later on The Norm Show, described how Wright had become completely crazed during the incident. Despite this dramatic moment, Wright later admitted that while he despised working on the show, he eventually came to understand that ALF brought joy to millions of viewers, which helped him make peace with the experience. Fact 2. The set was a literal death trap. The ALF set was genuinely dangerous, designed in a way that turned a simple sitcom soundstage into an obstacle course filled with hidden hazards. To make the puppet ALF appear anywhere on screen, the entire set had to be built on a platform that was 4 feet above the ground, with trapdoors cut into the floor at numerous locations throughout the Tanner family home. These weren't just small openings either. The holes were large enough for puppeteer Paul Fusco to fit through while operating ALF, and they were scattered everywhere across the set where ALF might need to appear. The kitchen had multiple trapdoors, the living room was filled with them, and even areas like behind the couch had openings that could accommodate the puppet operators working underneath. The cast members had to constantly watch where they stepped and memorize the exact locations of every single hole to avoid accidentally falling through during filming. Despite these precautions, accidents happened regularly. Ann Skadeen, who played Kate Tanner, once came out of the kitchen during a scene and fell directly into one of the openings, which made her extremely angry according to crew members who witnessed it. The production team got so used to these accidents that they actually started naming the holes after each person who fell into them. One crew member joked that people fell into the trapdoors all the time, and it became a running gag to commemorate each mishap by giving that particular hole the name of whoever had the misfortune of discovering it. Underneath the elevated set, there was an entire world of equipment, puppeteers, and technical crew members working in cramped conditions. The stagehands had set up everything they needed down there, including snacks, mini refrigerators, and even small beds, creating what one person described as everything except a convenience store under the stage. Fact 3. A heroin-addicted writer inspired episodes with his hallucinations. One of Alf's most memorable episodes came from a very dark place that had nothing to do with outer space. Jerry Stahl, a writer who worked on the show, was battling a serious heroin addiction during his time on ALF, and his drug-induced experiences directly influenced at least one episode that made it to television. Stahl wrote the episode called La Cucaracha, which aired during the first season and featured a giant cockroach that ALF accidentally brought to Earth from his spaceship. In the episode, this alien cockroach grows to enormous size when the Tanner family tries to kill it with bug spray, creating a genuinely creepy storyline that was quite different from ALF's usual lighthearted comedy. The cockroach was never actually shown on screen, but the episode managed to create real tension and fear through sound effects and the characters' reactions. What made this episode particularly notable was that fellow writers on the show knew exactly where Stahl got his inspiration. In an oral history of ALF, one writer specifically mentioned the La Cucaracha episode and commented that they could figure out where that particular story idea came from, clearly referring to Stahl's drug use and the hallucinations that often accompany heroin addiction. Stahl wasn't just a minor contributor to the show either. He was an accomplished television writer who had also worked on other major 80s series like Moonlighting and 30-something. His addiction eventually got him fired from ALF in 1989, but he later got help and wrote a memoir about his experiences called Permanent Midnight. This book was turned into a movie starring Ben Stiller, and one scene in the film actually featured Stiller's character hallucinating about the alien puppet from the show he wrote for, though they couldn't use ALF's name for legal reasons. Fact 4. Alf's full-body actor was completely uncredited. One of the most important performers on ALF never received any credit for his work, despite being essential to some of the show's most memorable scenes. Mihaly Mazaros, known professionally as Michu, was a Hungarian circus performer who stood only 2 feet 9 inches tall and weighed just 25 pounds, making him the perfect person to wear the full ALF costume whenever the alien needed to be shown walking, running, or standing in complete view. Most of the time, ALF appeared as just a puppet operated by Paul Fusco from underneath the set. But whenever the show needed to show ALF's entire body moving around, Michu would put on the heavy, furry costume and perform the scene. This included some of ALF's most iconic moments, like the opening credits sequence where ALF walks over to join the Tanner family for their group photo, which is one of the images most people remember from the show. Michu had an incredible background that made him perfect for this unusual job. He had performed with the Hungarian National Circus before coming to America in the 1970s, and later became a headliner with Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Circus, where he was billed as the smallest man on earth. He even performed for presidents Jimmy Carter and Ronald Reagan, and became friends with Michael Jackson after the pop star saw him performing and was amazed by his act. Despite his important contributions to ALF, Michu received absolutely no credit in the show's opening or closing titles. He worked on the show for about 10 episodes during the first season, but the producers eventually stopped using the full-body costume because it was too expensive and time-consuming to coordinate. After ALF ended, Michu continued acting in movies like Big Top Pee-wee and Waxwork, always bringing his unique circus skills to Hollywood productions. Fact 5. A child nearly died copying ALF's electrocution scene. ALF caused one of television's most dangerous copycat incidents when a real child nearly electrocuted himself trying to recreate a scene from the show. The original version of the episode Try to Remember, which aired on February 9, 1987, showed ALF bringing Kate's electric mixer into the bathtub to create what he called a whirling hot tub or homemade jacuzzi. In the original scene, ALF announced to Lynn that he was going to use the electric mixer in the bathroom, and viewers then heard a loud electrical zapping sound, saw a flash of light, and smoke pouring out of the bathroom. When ALF emerged, his fur was standing on end in the classic cartoon style, and he had developed amnesia from the electrical shock, which became the main plot of the episode. Paul Fusco, ALF's creator, was so concerned about safety that he ended the original episode with a public service announcement where ALF himself warned viewers that water and electricity don't mix. Despite this clear warning, NBC reported that a child attempted to recreate the exact scenario and nearly electrocuted himself in the process. Fortunately, the child was unharmed, but the incident terrified network executives and parents alike. NBC immediately demanded that Fusco reshoot the opening sequence and any references to electrocution throughout the episode. This was an expensive and complicated process because they had to bring back the entire cast and rebuild sets that had already been taken down. In the new version, ALF simply slips and falls in the bathtub, hitting his head and developing amnesia from the concussion instead of electrical shock. The network was so concerned about liability that they removed not just the electrocution scene, but also ALF's safety warning at the end of the episode. Every subsequent broadcast and home video release used the censored version, making the original electrocution scene one of the rarest pieces of ALF footage ever filmed. Fact 6. The planet Melmac is a 1950s dinnerwear joke. ALF's home planet has one of the most unusual names in science fiction history, and it comes from a very earthly source that most viewers never recognized. Melmac was actually the brand name of a type of dinnerware that became extremely popular in America during the 1950s, known for being virtually indestructible and marketed as perfect for families with children. The real Melmac dinnerware was made from a hard plastic material called melamine, and it was famous for being able to survive almost any abuse you could throw at it. Families loved it because kids could drop it, throw it, or even hit it with hammers without breaking it, making it ideal for everyday use during the height of the Cold War, when people wanted products that could last through anything, even a nuclear attack. Paul Fusco, ALF's creator, chose this name as an inside joke that connected to the show's family sitcom setting. The humor became even more obvious when ALF explained to the Tanner family in the pilot episode that his planet was called Melmac, and that it was also what the planet was literally made of, just like the dinnerware that shared its name. The joke worked on multiple levels because Melmac dinnerware came in colors that were considered quite ugly by many people, including putrid dark green, sickening yellow, bleak gray, and boring burgundy. When families set their tables with Melmac dishes, it often looked like something from a bizarre fantasy world, which made the connection to an alien planet even more fitting. This reference was subtle enough that many viewers never caught it, but anyone who grew up in the 50s and 60s would have immediately recognized the name and understood that ALF's creators were making a clever joke about one of the most durable and distinctively unattractive household products of the era. Fact 7. Episodes took 25 hours to film each. ALF was one of the most time-consuming sitcoms ever produced, requiring an absolutely staggering amount of filming time that made it a nightmare for everyone involved. While most 30-minute sitcoms could be filmed in just a few hours, each episode of ALF took between 20 and 25 hours to complete, often stretching across multiple days of grueling work. The extreme filming schedule happened because of the incredible technical complexity required to make ALF appear believable on screen. Unlike other shows where actors could simply interact with each other naturally, every scene with ALF required precise coordination between the human actors above the set and Paul Fusco operating the puppet from underneath, through the maze of trapdoors built into the floor. Every time the script called for ALF to move from one location to another, the entire production had to stop while the puppeteers repositioned themselves underneath the set and reset the complicated system of trapdoors. A simple direction like "Alf crosses the room" could easily add an hour to the filming schedule, according to crew members who joked that they would groan whenever they saw that kind of instruction in the script. The technical demands were so intense that ALF could never be filmed in front of a live studio audience like most sitcoms of that era. The constant stops, starts, and technical adjustments would have made it impossible for any audience to follow the story or stay entertained during the long delays between takes. Ann Skadine, who played Kate Tanner, described the experience as a technical nightmare that was extremely slow, hot, and tedious for everyone involved. The cast had to maintain their energy and performance quality over these marathon filming sessions, while also dealing with the physical dangers of the trapdoor-filled set and the frustration of constantly playing second fiddle to a puppet that got all the best lines and comedic moments. Fact 8. There was a rehearsal ALF called Ralph. The ALF production team created a secret backup puppet that was so ugly and crude that it became the subject of jokes among the crew members who had to work with it. This rehearsal version was officially nicknamed Ralph, which stood for Rehearsal Alien Lifeform, but the puppet was so hideous that many people on set started calling it Repulsive Alien Lifeform instead. The main ALF puppet was expensive and delicate, requiring careful maintenance to keep it looking good for the cameras throughout the show's 4-year run. To avoid unnecessary wear and tear on the primary puppet, the production team created Ralph as a crude early version that could be used during rehearsals and technical run-throughs without risking damage to the real ALF. Paul Fusco was extremely protective of the main ALF puppet and often refused to use it during rehearsals, preferring to substitute either his hand or the backup Ralph puppet instead. This meant that the actors frequently had to rehearse their scenes while interacting with something that looked nothing like the ALF that viewers would eventually see on television. Ralph served an important practical purpose because the show's complicated technical setup required extensive rehearsals to coordinate the timing between the actors above the set and the puppeteers working underneath through the trap doors. Every camera angle, lighting setup, and actor movement had to be planned and practiced multiple times before filming could begin with the real ALF puppet. The existence of Ralph shows just how seriously the production team took protecting their main asset, since the entire show depended on ALF looking believable and appealing to audiences. Without the backup puppet to handle the rough work of rehearsals and technical preparation, the primary ALF puppet might not have survived the demanding 4-year production schedule that required such intensive use across nearly 100 episodes. Fact 9. Alf's alcohol consumption was censored after Season 1. Alf started out as a much more adult character than most people remember, and one of his defining traits during the first season was his love of drinking beer. The original version of ALF was portrayed as something of a party animal who regularly consumed alcohol and made jokes about drinking, which fit with his sarcastic, wisecracking personality that was aimed more at adult audiences than children. In the very first episode of the series, Alf is shown drinking beer, and throughout the early episodes, he continued to be depicted as someone who enjoyed alcohol as part of his alien lifestyle. Paul Fusco, who created and voiced ALF, defended this character choice by pointing out that ALF was supposed to be 285 years old, making him certainly old enough to drink legally by any reasonable standard. However, as the show became more popular, NBC executives noticed that children were becoming huge fans of the furry alien character. Kids loved Alf's appearance, his jokes, and his mischievous behavior, and they started buying Alf merchandise and watching the show religiously. This created a problem for the network, which became concerned that a beer-drinking alien might not be the best role model for young viewers. Network executives approached Fusco and told him that he needed to eliminate ALF's alcohol consumption because kids were watching, and it sent the wrong message. Fusco pushed back against this decision, arguing that ALF was an adult character who should be able to do whatever he wanted, including drinking beer. He maintained that ALF was old enough and mature enough to make his own choices about alcohol. Despite Fusco's protests, NBC insisted that the drinking had to stop, and by the end of the first season, ALF's alcohol consumption disappeared almost entirely from the show. The only exception was a later episode called Tequila, where Alf's drinking actually served a moral purpose by helping an alcoholic character realize she needed to get help. Fact 10. The cast suffered serious personal problems during filming. The stress and difficult working conditions on ALF took a serious toll on the cast members, who were dealing with major personal health issues while trying to perform in one of television's most technically demanding productions. The combination of grueling filming schedules, dangerous working conditions, and the frustration of playing second fiddle to a puppet created an environment that was harmful to everyone's well-being. Andrea Elson, who played the teenage daughter Lynn Tanner, developed bulimia during the second season of filming. The eating disorder was made worse by the stress of working on the show, particularly the difficulty of having to act alongside a puppet that got all the attention and best lines, while the human actors struggled with the technical demands and long hours. Max Wright, who played Father Willie Tanner, was battling lymphoma during the show's run, which added a serious health crisis to his already intense dislike of working with the ALF puppet. His illness made the physically demanding and emotionally draining production even more difficult to endure. After the show ended, Wright also struggled with addiction issues and was later photographed in compromising situations that made headlines. Anne Skadine, who played Mother Kate Tanner, described the overall atmosphere on set as toxic and unhealthy. She characterized the cast and crew as a big dysfunctional family and stated bluntly that there was no joy on the set during the show's production. Skadine explained that the technical nightmare of filming with the puppet made everything extremely slow, hot, and tedious for everyone involved. The personal problems were so severe that Elson later said that if ALF had continued for another season, everybody would have lost it. The show's demanding nature seemed to attract or create serious issues for many people involved, making it a cautionary tale about the hidden costs of television production. Fact 11. Every single episode title references a song. ALF had one of the most unique naming conventions in television history, with every single episode title being based on a popular song from various decades and genres. This musical theme turned the show's episode list into something resembling a jukebox playlist that spanned everything from classic rock to Broadway show tunes, creating a hidden musical layer that many viewers never noticed. The song references covered an incredible range of musical styles and eras, showing the writer's broad knowledge of popular music. Some episodes were named after major rock hits, like Have You Seen Your Mother, Baby, Standing in the Shadow, which came from a Rolling Stones song, while others drew from Broadway musicals, folk music, and even novelty songs from earlier decades. Many of the episode titles were clever plays on the original song names that connected to the actual plot of the episode. For example, Try to Remember was named after a song from the musical The Fantastics, and the episode dealt with ALF losing his memory, making the title both a song reference and a perfect description of the story. The tradition wasn't just random either. Each title had something meaningful to do with the episode's content, creating a double layer of meaning that worked both as a musical reference and as a description of what happened in the story. This required the writers to be creative in finding songs that could be adapted to fit their storylines while still being recognizable to music fans. This naming system made ALF unique among sitcoms of its era, when most shows used straightforward descriptive titles or simple phrases. The musical references added an extra element of fun for viewers who caught the connections, while also demonstrating the show's creators' appreciation for the rich history of American popular music across multiple generations and styles. Fact 12. Burger King gave away ALF records. In 1988, Burger King created one of the most memorable fast food promotions of the 1980s when they gave away special ALF puppets that came with actual playable records, featuring original songs performed by Paul Fusco in character as ALF. This promotion went far beyond typical fast food toys by including genuine musical content that kids could take home and play on their record players. The promotion featured 4 different ALF hand puppets, each representing a different theme and activity. There was Beach ALF for surfing, Chef ALF for cooking, Baseball ALF for sports, and Rockin' ALF for music. Each puppet came with its own corresponding cardboard record that contained an original song related to that puppet's specific theme, creating a complete entertainment package that was unusually elaborate for a restaurant giveaway. The songs included on these records were Melmac Rock, Cooking with ALF, Melmac Girls, and Take Me Alf to the Ball Game, all of which were parodies or original compositions performed by Paul Fusco using ALF's distinctive voice. These weren't just throwaway jingles either, but actual full-length songs that kids could listen to repeatedly, making them genuine collectible items rather than simple promotional materials. The quality of both the puppets and the records was surprisingly high for a fast food promotion, with the puppets being well made enough that many have survived in good condition decades later. The records were made from thin but playable cardboard material called flexi discs, which were a popular format for promotional records during that era because they were cheaper to produce than regular vinyl. This promotion showed just how massive ALF's popularity had become by 1988, when major corporations were willing to invest in elaborate tie-ins that went far beyond simple plastic toys, creating genuine entertainment products that extended the ALF experience beyond television. Fact 13. The show ended on an unresolved cliffhanger. ALF ended in one of the most frustrating ways possible for fans, with a dramatic cliffhanger that was never properly resolved on television. The final episode, called Consider Me Gone, aired on March 24, 1990, and ended with ALF being captured by the Alien Task Force, a government agency that had been hunting him throughout the series and planned to dissect him for scientific research. The episode was deliberately written as a cliffhanger because the show's creators hoped it would pressure NBC into renewing ALF for a 5th season. They thought that ending on such a dramatic note, with ALF's life hanging in the balance, would make it impossible for the network to cancel the show without resolving his fate. The episode concluded with the words, "To be continued," flashing across the screen, suggesting that viewers would find out what happened to ALF in future episodes. Unfortunately, this strategy completely backfired when NBC decided to cancel ALF anyway, leaving millions of fans wondering whether their favorite alien had been killed by government scientists or had somehow managed to escape. The cancellation came with little warning, and the network showed no interest in producing additional episodes to wrap up the storyline, despite the obvious demand from viewers who had followed ALF's adventures for 4 years. For 6 long years, ALF fans had no idea what happened to the character after his capture, making it one of television's most notorious unresolved cliffhangers. Finally, in 1996, a television movie called Project ALF was produced to provide some closure to the story. The movie revealed that ALF had indeed escaped from the government facility, but it featured none of the original human cast members and received terrible reviews from both critics and fans, who generally refused to accept it as proper continuation of the series. Fact 14. Alf appeared in Mel Gibson's The Passion of the Christ. One of the most unexpected and bizarre movie cameos in film history happened when Mishu Meszaros, the circus performer who wore the ALF costume for full-body shots, appeared in Mel Gibson's controversial religious epic, The Passion of the Christ, in 2004. This created the surreal connection between a beloved 80s sitcom alien and one of the most intense biblical films ever made. In the movie, Meszaros played what was supposed to be a baby being held by a woman who was watching Jesus' crucifixion, However, because of Mazaros's adult proportions and distinctive appearance, the result was deeply unsettling to audiences who noticed something was very wrong with this particular infant. The casting choice created an intentionally disturbing visual effect that fit with Gibson's overall approach to making the film as emotionally challenging as possible. Mazaros received no credit for this role, continuing the pattern of his work on ALF, where he also went uncredited despite being essential to some of the show's most memorable scenes. The appearance was brief but memorable enough that film fans and ALF enthusiasts eventually discovered the connection and began pointing it out as one of the strangest crossovers in entertainment history. The casting made sense from a practical standpoint because Mazaros's small stature allowed him to be held like a baby, while his adult features created the eerie effect that Gibson was looking for in this particular scene. His experience working in costumes and unusual roles from his circus background and his time on ALF made him perfect for this type of specialized character work. This appearance represents one of the most unusual career trajectories in Hollywood, connecting a lighthearted family sitcom about a cat-eating alien with one of the most serious and controversial religious films of the 21st century. Fact 15. Paul Fusco treated Alf like a real alien. Paul Fusco took his commitment to the ALF character to such an extreme level that he genuinely seemed to believe in the illusion he had created, treating the puppet as if it were actually a living extraterrestrial being rather than an inanimate object he was operating. This dedication to maintaining the fantasy went far beyond normal acting or puppeteering and became something closer to an obsession with keeping ALF's alien identity intact. Fusco was notoriously secretive about every aspect of ALF's production and absolutely refused to acknowledge that ALF was anything other than a real alien who had crash-landed on Earth. He required everyone involved with the show to maintain this illusion at all times, warning cast and crew members never to reveal any of ALF's production secrets or break character when discussing the show, even in private conversations. Perhaps most remarkably, Fusco claimed that he never referred to ALF as it or called the character a puppet, always treating ALF as a living being with thoughts and feelings. He went so far as to say that he would actually ask ALF for writing advice when working on scripts, as if the character had independent opinions about storylines and dialogue that were separate from Fusco's own creative input. Fusco considered ALF to be an extension of himself rather than just a character he performed, creating an unusually intense relationship between creator and creation that was unlike most other puppeteer situations in television or film. This approach helped make ALF more believable and consistent as a character, but it also contributed to the difficult working conditions on set, because Fusco's extreme protectiveness of the ALF illusion made him inflexible about production changes or compromises. The secrecy extended to using a backup rehearsal puppet to avoid wear and tear on the main ALF, showing just how seriously Fusco took protecting both the physical puppet and the carefully constructed fantasy surrounding the character's supposed alien origins.